I think let's begin. Very warm welcome on a Friday, 8th of November, everyone. And we wanted to start with our CMMC compliance readiness check webinar today. And I wanted to put forward that even though the events looks like a law, but we are not a lawyer. We're just giving and sharing our best knowledge, best practices here. All right. We're starting with the three of us, Kelly, Dan, and myself. So I will allow Kelly to give his introduction.
Sure. Thank you very much, Prabhat. I was going to almost say good morning, everybody. Just get used to being in the mornings, but good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelly Kindle. I'm the CEO and president at ANC Strategic Services. We're one of the authorized C3PAOs, number 45 out of the currently 58. And we know there's not a lot and there needs to be more. So they're avidly working on getting more approved. We're out here in the Southern California area and we are actively already scheduling for next year's assessments with, over the last 3 weeks, it's been a lot of activity, we'll just say. So if you're out in the west half of the country, you're probably already reaching out to us, and if you haven't, you probably should. But we're one of the very few C3POs out here on the West Coast. We're a cybersecurity services provider as well. We've been doing consulting with CMMC on 800-171 for, I think, about 5 years now. We've been around for 6 years and extremely involved in this CMMC space. Every week I'm on at least 2 hour-long calls related to CMMC, and it's usually with our C3PO stakeholders forum, which is a group of all the C3PO, a lot of them, I should say, maybe not all. And then Friday's calls with all the authorized C3POs, the cyber AB, and sometimes some of the DoD folks jump in. So kind of feel like I'm living in this CMMC space right now. So I'll keep it short and keep it at that.
Thank you, Kelly. Dan?
Hi, my name is Dan Labus. I'm a CMMC consultant at G5. I'm very proud to hold the CMMC Certified Assessor credential along with the CCP, the CMMC Certified Professional. I also hold the CISP accreditation as well. I'm a government GRC, Governance, Risk, and Compliance Professional at G5. I'm working as a project manager, implementing security controls and projects, and proud to offer CMMC consulting services. Again, I'm with G5, and we'll let Prabhat tell us more about our great company.
Thank you, Dan. Myself, Prabhat Nigam, Global CTO for Golden 5. 26 years in the IT industry. I cannot think about that, how time has passed, and I passed 26 years in IT. I'm like, oh, really, I passed that much? All right, so I'm also MBA in IT, so and then I'm also CCP trained. Haven't appeared for the exam yet, but yeah, forthcoming days I'm going to be doing that. I represent Golden 5, which is a Microsoft AOSG partner, solution partner, GCC High reseller, Azure Top Secret reseller as well, Azure GCC reseller. We also provide IT consulting, IT security consulting, IT managed services, and we have a highly skilled Microsoft experienced staff or MVPs in our belt. With being said, I think I'll pass the mic to Dan. You are going first, or yeah?
Yes, I'd like to just give a brief overview of the program, and then we'll pass it off to Kelly and Prabhat, and I'll tell you more about specific concerns and offerings as well. I like to add a little context about CMMC because we all have a wide range of experience. Some of us drank the Kool-Aid very early. Some of us are just getting on board. There's great concern about this new pain that contractors are contending with. So I like to think about again the context. Why CMMC? Well, we have to remind ourselves that contracts have had cyber requirements essentially since 2016, and then the next item here is, if you can go to the next slide. I'm sorry, I highlighted each one, provide, and I don't have control over it. So the SPURS reporting has been required since 2020 with a possible DIBCAC audit. Now, because of such a large number of contractors, the potential for receiving a DIBCAC audit was very, very low, and so for that purpose, due to that, the next point here reflects how much participation and how accurate the participation was for self-reporting. An audit concluded that it was roughly 26% accuracy in the entire DIB. So the next point here says, what is CMMC? Well, CMMC adds the program, which is it provides the mechanism for verification of these already existing requirements. And I think it's a very good point. The next line says, CMMC doesn't add new cybersecurity requirements. This is the verification of the same requirements that have been around since 2020 and even sooner. What it also adds is and this is the maturity part of it, I believe, it adds a continuous monitoring and reporting requirement where this is not an audit, this is an assessment. This isn't a checklist that we're checking off once. We're going to repeat this, the certification process, the full assessment every 3 years with an annual attestation where there will be a requirement to report any changes, any major changes to your system, and then, but the idea is the requirement is to report non-compliance, and so this is why we have this program because we needed to verify in order to enforce it across the entire DIB. And so the next slide is, I believe, is just a review of the standards. And so,
yep.
This is where we stand. I'm sorry. Is there?
No,
okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, okay, great, sure, thank you. So this is where we're at today, and it's Title 32 of the CFR Part 170. So 32 CFR creates the CMMC program, and as we can see, the effective date is December 16th, 2024, which means the final rule has been completed, and we're looking at the certification ability and requirement. We're going to see immediately on the effective date. However, on the next item, the 48 CFR, this is the rule that includes the CMMC clause in the contracts, and we're expecting optimistically Q1 of 2025. At the latest Q2. So this will be part of a rollout. The program will be in effect, which means technically the DoD can require certification immediately. More importantly, and I'm sure this will be covered later, the primary contractors are going to flow down to their subs immediately, and if they haven't already. And it's good to know. I'm sure it'll be brought up later too. But this certification will be required prior to the award of a contract, and your primary is likely not going to include a contractor if they haven't at least made progress towards the certification or the compliance equivalency at least. These rules are based on the controls listed in the NIST special publication 800-171. 171A is for the assessment objectives. Currently, it's based on the revision 2 of 800-171. There is a new revision out, and we believe that sometime next year they'll start working on new rulemaking for the CMMC program requirements to include that revision 3. But at this time, this is the current standard. So what are we looking at with CMMC? Well, we're trying to protect CUI and FCI. CUI as the protection of CUI was introduced with DFARS 7012 back in November 2017, and it was required to be implemented, the compliance for all contracts that included the 7012 clause, which essentially all contracts that handled CUI, either process, stored, or transmit. But it was required. All contractors were required to be in compliance by December 31st, 2017. So again, underscore, this is not new compliance. This is not something that is being sprung upon us. The FCI, that's a level 1, which I'll get to on the next slide, but this is contract information, and every contract has this. And so there is if the contract specifically does not identify CUI, or CUI is not involved in the performance of the contract, this is there is a lower standard of security controls, rightfully so. And so on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about that. There's 3 levels of certification. And we'll start. Oh, let's go back. Let's go back one more, please. Go back one. Oh, no. Oh, maybe I didn't include it in your deck. I apologize. Yeah, let's take a look at those. Let's start at level 1 at the bottom. This is for the FCI, for handling FCI, and it's 15 controls of the 110 that are listed in the 800-171, as I mentioned. This is a foundational level, and there is a self-assessment option for this. Actually, this is all of that's required is a self-assessment, but there is annual affirmation, and all of the compliance requirements for reporting apply to this as well. And so moving up to the level 2, this is when CUI is handled and is included in the performance of the contract. And this is all 110 of the security controls. And I'll note that there's 320 objectives, so it's a pretty big deal, and it requires a greater amount of preparation, a greater effort, and also this level of certification requires a third party. This is the C3PAO. This is the Certified Third Party Assessment Organization, and it is again, it's a triennial. It's every 3 years. However, there is the annual reporting as well, and there is a very, very small percentage of contracts that will allow self-assessment in this level. It is such a small percentage that we actually, just kind of we don't even really talk about it. We don't want to get people's hopes up that they're in the same boat as the level self assessment requirement. And then of course on the expert level, this is much higher security, and this is handled by the DIVCAC directly with the OSCs, the organizations seeking certification. This is not only all of the 110 requirements from 800-171, but an additional 24 from 172. So I think this is an overview of the program, and we're not doing a deep dive here, but we are always available to answer specific questions, and I wanted to also mention that there really is no out-of-the-box solution for preparing for CMMC. This is very specific to each organization. So there, we mentioned we're not lawyers and we're not giving legal advice. The other reason to mention that is that we want to take a look at each situation, each system, individually in order to guide you properly. And so I think that's a nice brief overview, and I think we can hand it off to Kelly, who I believe is next.
Well, I will do this briefly because I know you'd rather hear me talk about CMMC than talk about us. So slide in here just as a good explanation of who we are as a company. I mentioned us briefly earlier. So obviously one of the authorized C3PAOs. And if you don't know why we accentuate that word authorized are the only ones that are available to start conducting assessments. There's others that were called candidate, which is what you get before you have your DIBCAC assessment and pass it. So authorized is very important. Eventually we'll become accredited once ISO and stuff gets taken care of. Not for right now. Call doesn't really matter. Been around in this for a long time. We are a disabled veteran-owned small business, and one thing that we always tell everybody about is, one, a nonprofit we formed, and two, we commit 10% of our annual profits every year to go directly to support military and veteran families, and the nonprofit that we formed called U.S. Valor that has a cybersecurity apprenticeship program for people getting out of the military, get them properly trained in cybersecurity, and get them into the civilian workforce. All right, that was the fastest I've ever done. All right, I think, did you have a next slide from that? No, that was the main slide on who was us for us, but.
This is the timeline one. Want to go over to that?
No, this is your slide, Prabhat, I believe. And I'll be happy to if you like.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you want, I can pontificate a little bit about the new rule.
Yeah, I think
that, or you want to cover
ahead,
that?
Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I've been doing this a lot lately, so I'm kind of used to it now. But since this final rules come out, obviously there's two rules that have to get in place, as mentioned before this whole program is official. But with the final rule coming out, what we do know and what we don't know. What we know is the effective date is December 16th. What we don't know for sure yet is when we're going to officially be allowed to start the assessments. We are hoping and expecting, although I don't plan on doing an assessment the last 2 weeks of December. I don't know anybody that would be maybe sadistic enough to say, yeah, let's do our assessment during Christmas. A lot of families would be broken up over that, I would imagine. But we're expecting right now and actually starting to schedule our entire year out. And so we're planning on January as the beginning of when we'll actually be able to start. There's a lot of things going on in the back end between the C3POs, CCAs, the Cyber AB, DoD, all these little things that have to get taken care of now that are being accelerated because it's actually real and it's happening. And a lot of it has to do with the qualifications to be a CCA and to be on an assessment team. Some of the reauthorizations that have to be done for every C3PO before that rule is effective. So we're working hard on getting that all done. And there's just a lot of moving pieces to this. So the effective date is when the rule is in force. When we will officially, for sure, be able to start the assessment, I expect will be in the beginning of January. Maybe they'll make it in the last part of December, but we'll see. Let's see. So I'm looking at the slide and I'm trying to think of some things that I can add to it and not read from it, but add to it. It's the biggest questions we're getting right now are pretty similar in that it's, well, how do I know what I need to do? How do I know what level I need to be? How much is it going to cost? I know that's a surprising question that we're getting a lot right now, but sorry, I have a little bit of sarcasm. That is my usual sense of humor, that or puns, so bear with me. It always comes out. But everybody's asking about when can I get assessed? How can I get assessed? What time can I get assessed? What can I guarantee? How much is it going to cost? How does this whole thing work? And Daniel, provide, tell me if you want me to jump into answering that now, or if you had a progress of future slides where you wanted me to get into some of those specifics.
You do have your, yeah, you have your slide with the top questions.
Oh, good. You do have the top 5. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we include that for you. So yeah, and
Okay.
we've saved a bunch of time for you.
All right, perfect. Well, then I'll pause, Dan, if you want to cover anything on this slide before we jump to that.
No, I think we've covered it, and you've certainly addressed most of these already. We get a lot of questions of how long it's going to take. Well, it actually is 6 to 18 months, depending on if you're not aware of your scope. So the scoping is very important to understand, and then also your gap analysis. Where are you now? You have to know where you are now, and you have to be able to measure it in order to plan how to address deficiencies, but also we're looking at a very, very real possibility of a bottleneck with it's a total of about 80,000. I think it's 77,000 level 2 OSC or OSAs. But there will be a phased rollout. We're not going to see all of them in 2025. But if you look at the number of C3PAOs, I think last week they count 58, and CCAs. I think we're at 328. But the new rule is requiring 3 per assessment. So, I mean, if just some basic math, I mean, it's going to be very, very busy for everyone, and so we're encouraging everyone to begin this process now, because we're really 9 months to a year is not unrealistic, and so I think that's what the remainder of this slide is for. It's not coming, it's here, as far as the requirement to prepare. And so I think that's that we're already seeing that. And I think Kelly, you're demonstrating that by mentioning your schedule, how it's already there's already a line forming, and so this is our message.
You raised a question here, right? The 3 per assessment. What do you mean by that? Dan?
Actually, can I clarify that, Dan?
Yes.
Sure. If it's all right with you, I want to jump in and clarify that one. So originally what was going on is that they were going to require every CCA to have participated on 3 assessments before they would be allowed to be on an official assessment team. And they were trying to work that out to where we would do it during the joint surveillance voluntary assessments. And it became very much a quagmire, and DoD basically came and said, we're not going to require that in the final rule. If the Cyber AV wants to, that's on them, but our requirement is, and they put out a lot more requirements on the CCAs than we originally expected, certification requirements, things that are based on a DoD policy called 8140, which is the certain government roles you're going to be in cybersecurity. If you're going to be an assessor, you have to meet these certification requirements, experience requirements, etc. That has been used as the basis now for the CCAs and the lead CCA, which is even harder. And so now we're literally submitting forms and evidence to show that we have the qualifications. And so they took away, Cyber AV made the choice to take away the requirement to have 3 assessments done, which a lot of us have mixed feelings on. There's some good, there's some bad to that, because one of the concerns is new CCAs coming into the market, maybe don't have the experience, jumping on teams, and not having the best results that we all want to see. Obviously, I'm a C3PO, but I'm also a consultant. I want you to pass the assessment, but I also want you to prove that you can pass the assessment. We're not just going to pass anybody just because we want you to. We want you to pass it. It's our goal for you as well. But as assessors, we have to make sure you pass it. So I wanted to mention one other thing too, with the bottleneck. This is a really important point. This ties into when to start. The bottleneck is already happening. There's already I know of multiple C3POs that have already booked for the next year. I already see what's happening with us. And what I will tell you is some simple numbers to explain why this is such a bottleneck. We're a very small C3PO, but we're going to field 2 assessment teams is our plan. 2 assessment teams. One assessment team can do 2 assessments per month. You really can't do more than that because of the amount of work that gets done over a 2-week period. You really couldn't do more than that. So you're one team doing 2 per month. Now you got 2 teams. We're doing 4 per month. That's 48 per year. That's not very much. And that's us maxed out on capacity. So if you think about why there's such a big bottleneck, there's 58 of us. If they were all doing the same, some are bigger, some will field larger teams maybe, but that's 2,784 companies assessed over the course of the first year. There's 80,000 that need to estimate it, and I think there's going to be more because someone mentioned, I think Dan earlier, about primes, and what primes require, the DoD doesn't have control over that. And the primes are requiring and pushing harder and have higher expectations of all of their subs. So the bottleneck is very, very real. And the reason I want to accentuate that because of the time frame is you still have time. That's the good news. If you haven't started, over the last few years, we've out there in the community have been trying to say, please get started, please get started, please get started. It's no longer that message. The message is you have to have already been started. If you haven't started, you've got to start right now. Because at a minimum, it's going to take 6 months, like I said, 6 to 18 months to get everything going, implemented, get all the evidence to where you're assessment ready. Not just I reported 110 SPUR score, but I'm actually ready to be assessed. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot to do for that implementation and preparation. So you have time. Do not delay now. Okay, I digress. I'll get off my soapbox.
I do need to correct this language here. What I mean by the 3, it's the 3 CCAs on the team. Two CCAs on the team, and then the quality control that also I believe is required to be a CCA as well.
Excellent.
Wow.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. So I corrected you on the wrong thing. But yeah, that's absolutely true. And that's also what's driving the challenges, that's driving the bottleneck, and that's also driving the cost. A lot of C3POs decided to be a single assessor with one QA, and I didn't. We actually based ours, fortunately, on what it ended up being. But in calculations and cost calculations, if you want to know the back end of how we figure out what an assessment is going to cost, it's ridiculously simple math. How many assessors? How many total hours is the assessment going to take? What's the billing rate? That's the equation. I mean, it's incredibly simple how we are calculating this right now. So, yeah, the increase in requirements is definitely having that impact. I've seen quotes go up, not just what we've sent out over the last 3 or 4 weeks, but what I'm hearing others are getting. And I'll cover it later, but we're very candid when anybody calls us about what pricing ranges are going to be. The reason I'm saying that now, you mentioned assessment scope earlier, and I want to harp on this and jump on this because it's so critical. You have to identify and define very, very well your assessment scope because that is what the pricing is going to be based on. That's how we do our pricing is the assessment scope. If you have 2,000 employees, but you have a 20-person enclave, and that's what's being assessed, that's what the assessment scope is. That's how we base our pricing off. Small, medium, and large, like T-shirt sizes, like one of our clients said. It's very simple. It's small is what we expect to be most assessments. Small businesses, small enclaves, small enterprise, 150 employee manufacturer, total enterprise scope. So that scope is really critical.
All right, so that's a very good explanation. Thanks, Dan and Kelly. That 3 per assessment was very tricky one. Good to know.
Yeah.
And my God,
it's
my
a
God.
new one.
Now,
It's a new one. Yeah.
like two assessors assigned to one assessment plus a QA, 3 staff. So this is foolproof. But then also think about it, how many CCAs are going to be busy with that. So it's /half. So that's what you will see whenever I'm giving a talk. my talk opens up saying and close up saying that, hey guys, if you're looking for a job, look for CCA is a new profession because we are in need to have more CCAs. All right, that's our thought on that. Um, so that we're trying to add more CCAs as well as they can. So we promote that, we recommend that. But then very good to know that this new requirement for three per assessment, that's definitely adding more resources to and making it foolproof.
And that's the minimum too, just so you know, depending on the assessment scope size, it could go up from
Yeah.
there. So
Yeah.
that's the bare minimum we're allowed to have.
Yeah, and I want to mention that I just had a customer call, and they have not even started. So they just started using the Azure Gov. They just said we want to start with the Azure first, and then we'll move to the M365 side of it, and then we start the CMMC assessment. I'm like, that you're too far away. You have to do these 10 things before you even think about C3PAO. But I think you should still start talking to C3PAO and look for their time allotment and have a primarily start discussions. So that so there are a lot of DoD contractors. They haven't even started anything. So that's where I think challenges for them are coming. I think we have to keep pushing them or recommending them as soon as they start would be great. So I have a question. I'm going to come back later, but I have a question related to that. So um, I think we're good to jump to the next slide. Anything else, Dan, you think we're good?
No, it's great. I think we covered it. Yeah.
All right, Dan, you want to pick up this one?
Yeah, this is another incentive. There's most certainly a legal liability whenever you're facing regulatory compliance. There's also the market competition. The advantage in the market for early adopters. However, we're still with the previous experience in mind. We want to highlight that the Department of Justice and really the entire federal government is on board with this effort. There has very clearly been identified deficiencies in our cybersecurity programs in the government and also in the very vast DIB. Again, 80,000 is just the level 2. I mean, we're looking at, a couple 100,000 systems out there. We can also see the blatant copying of our technology, across the Pacific. And so there are several reasons for why we're doing this. We kind of we really should consider what happens if we don't. What happens if we don't if we're filing false claims. This is when the Department of Justice gets involved, and they already have. But again, this 7012 clause for COI has been present in contracts since 2017. Obviously, that hasn't been done consistently or across the board. So now, if you fail to report your non-compliance, in other words, if you exaggerate on your score intentionally, or if there are those annual changes or deficiencies of non-compliance that you do not report. This is obviously not in the spirit of this entire program. And again, if it is intentional and noted by the Department of Justice, each contractor may face a penalty of up to 3 times the value of the contract. It's a significant amount of money. It's not to be trifled with. Whistleblower protection, whistleblowers and their protection is quite common these days, commonly discussed in the public domain. In this case, they've earmarked up to 30% of that penalty to the contractor can be awarded to the whistleblower. So this is a built-in incentive for anyone who is aware of these false claims can file a claim on behalf of the government. They don't have to be an insider. They don't have to be an employee. It has to be valid information, obviously. But this is the method of enforcing this program throughout the DIB. There certainly is not enough resources or staff at the DOJ, so they've opened it up to anybody who witnesses and is aware of this malfeasance can report, and they gain the protection of the federal government. And there actually was recently a couple of cases where in the retaliation from the contractor against the employees in this case, the employee turned whistleblower was able to proceed with their claim, even though the initial report of false claims didn't go anywhere. Perhaps it was settled, perhaps it was foundless or baseless. But just that retaliation against the whistleblower created a new claim. And so there are opportunities, there are mechanisms in place that are also very strong incentives for business owners and organizations seeking certification. This should not be ignored. This is very real. We're seeing some very big numbers in the public domain. So I think it's important to mention that as well.
I think in the bigger picture that no one should ignore this and stay true wherever you are ready or you're not ready, be true on that. That's a moral of the story.
Yes.
Heading up to the anything from you, Kelly?
Yeah, I want a perspective about why this is so important besides just the obvious. It's only going to get more because what's happening in the final rule, and that's what's being implemented, is this annual attestation requirement. You get assessed. Every year you have your attestations.
Yep.
That has to be done by a signatory, a person who has the authority to sign on behalf of the organization. What does that do? That sets up liability. If you think that DoD is not serious about this, really contemplate the amount that these false claims are going up and what is being, I don't want being set up for, so to speak, but let's say you're a CEO and you do your annual attestation after you've been assessed and you passed and you know something's changed. You do your annual attestation saying we've continued to be compliant, our system hasn't changed, and we're going to continue to be compliant. You've now taken on that liability. So if for some reason they find out that that's not wrong, whistleblowers, that could happen. That's a very real threat to your business. So that's why this is being taken and should be taken so seriously. It's not just every 3 years and I don't have to worry about it. It's continuous compliance. Those are the two words that to me are the most important that I try to convey to us, to our clients, to anyone I talk to. This is about continuous compliance, not checklist once every 3 years. Hopefully that
Absolutely. Just make it a practice, just like you'd brush every day. Just think about it. It's compliant. Follow that in your practice. This is going to be our practice. Use the security. See the security practices are very important. All right. That leads to the next slide, which is my slide. I wanted to talk more about what and how Gordon 5 can help you achieve your CMMC compliance. A lot of technical features and technologies available in Microsoft framework. So the first two towers of mine on the left-hand side talking about M365, and the first and second is the Azure. So how we help you guys, help any organization is we help you create Microsoft GCC High tenant. We help you assign M365 licenses. Also, we help you with the Microsoft Intune deployment and also the Microsoft Intune Defender mobile threat defense in case you're keeping the data in mobile devices as well. So not only the device management, device update, device compliance through the Intune, but also the mobile device threat defense as well. Then also Microsoft Defender covers your endpoints, identity, clouds, apps, email security as well. Microsoft Windows Hello also allows you to do the biometrics based multi-factor authentication even when you are in offline mode. Uh, then Microsoft Purview also adds more on the protection side, data loss prevention or encryption functionality. Similarly, the privileged identity management adds the less number of administrators when you are not in office. Um, then Microsoft Rollback Access Management also allows limited access when where you have to have access, then only you get the access to those places. Conditional access also blocks unwanted networks, unwanted countries access, and other functionalities to differently use to be compliant as well. Now jumping onto the Azure side of it, Azure also covers you with the Azure Gov subscription we offer, and we also help you with Microsoft Sentinel, SIEM deployment, and the management after that for managed detection and response. We also help you with Azure Arc for Windows Server or other servers, update management across different cloud or on-prem and hybrid cloud. But then that's automate your update management as well. Then when Microsoft Defender for Cloud, for any resource you have in the cloud, covers your security with Defender. Then Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365 could protect your data being accessed or downloaded to a local device. If you think that could be more productive as well to just keep all the data in Azure Virtual Desktop. Or the users are using Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows PC and just keep the data there, not bringing into the local disk. Yeah. You may have some requirement for the printers. We understand that maybe in different avenues. So that could be a separate thing. And in that case, you can have only one device where everyone can access the printing of the printing files. Then Azure Backup for the Azure resources, Azure Monitoring, Azure RBAC, and also don't forget the Privileged Access Workstation where you can access the admin sites only from this workstation, not from anywhere in the world or any laptop. Just you have to jump to multiple hops and access this workstation to access the admin consoles. So imagine that could be more productive. That covers a lot of controls. Some controls may not be covered by Microsoft. So that's why we have added a third tower, which is covering non-Microsoft or ready softwares as well. Like Teams, there's no Microsoft dashboard or clear checkpoint, clear monitoring software. So we have built a customized Teams dashboard that will help you to watch the Teams calling and how much calls coming and all those data. Then we have also laid out a subcontractor enclave in case you are a prime contractor and you want to cover your subcontractors who may not have funding for going for GCC High or CMMC compliance. Then I think they can live in your umbrella, and that way they will be compliant as well. Then we have some couple of softwares we're going to talk next couple of slides. I'll jump onto the second last point is Future Feed as a GRC tool. We recommend if you are multi-cloud, then this tool is very helpful, or you are a hybrid, then it's very helpful. But if you are just M365, maybe compliance.microsoft.com could be helpful for GRC as well. Then Veeam backup for M365 data. Microsoft has started offering M365 backup in commercial, but at least not in GCC High yet. So Veeam backup will be covering that portion as well. Jumping to the next slide is our couple of softwares from the Golden 5, which helps in adding compliance, is one Neo user management software, which sits on your SharePoint Online and helps you create the users, groups, and whatnot, just taking the onboarding, offboarding headache of the user and the groups management. Not only that, it can also create the mailbox and assign licenses for you for M365 and deassign when the user leaves. Important factor is many organizations do not realize that they have licenses available because they forgot to remove the licenses from the former employees' mailboxes. So that way, there's no chance of forgetting it, and you will be able to recover. Another point here is how it's related to the compliance is less number of administrators would be required after using Neo, and less number of logins. Now think about it. When you do a lot of logins, what it does, it creates a log entry for every login, every action, whereas automation may have the log entry but may not have additional login entry. So that will reduce the number of logins, that will reduce number of logs, and logs will be shipped to SIEM solution. So think of that, the reduced number of logs, reduced number of SIEM solution expense, and log shipping as well. So that adds up a lot of benefits for compliance expenses. Now, second software we have is policy acknowledgement, which allows you to create the policies, assign it to your staff and employees and even consultants. Once they pass the policy, then you can also track that how many users have passed the policy, have not passed the policies, or they're due. There's so many policies required in CMMC compliance to write, and obviously employees to follow. So it's just not about that you write the policy and you're done, but all your employees should know about those policies and also follow them, right? So if you need to track them, that becomes a cumbersome process. And I think Policy Act will help you to track that as well. And it sits again in the SharePoint Online, so you don't have to worry about that, oh, my data is going outside my office. No, it's still going to sit in your Microsoft tenant SharePoint Online. Next is, I think we look for Kelly for top 5 questions.
All right. So looking at the time we're at 1:49, hopefully we're okay. I'm probably just going to pontificate and talk fast, which I don't normally try to do on these, but there's some key things I want to hit in here that are really important points. So I'm going to jump in. One, we've already explained what the final rule is. So I think everybody folks should feel comfortable with the explanations of what this final rule is. It is final. It is in place. It's not going away. The Congress that's going to be in is not going to magically cancel the entire program, which hypothetically could happen. Is not going to happen. They will review it and they will give thumbs up. It's too critical to the DoD. 2, when will this start to show up in contracts? We've covered that to a degree. What we do know is Title 48 is required for it to become a final rule before the phases start. Phase 1, there's something really important in the final rule that changed, which is the extension of Phase 1. Phase 1 originally was only going to be 6 months long. It's now 12 months long. So you've been granted 6 months extra, so to speak, to get yourself assessed. Why do I think 6 months was an important number for them to add? If you go and have an assessment done and you don't pass your assessment, you have how long of a window to get your POAMs taken care of? 6 months. So if you think about it, that maybe it's coincidence, maybe not, but to me, I don't think it is. So it makes a lot of sense. Sooner you get going, sooner the better. You get your assessment done. As long as you meet that 80% threshold and the right requirements to be eligible to have that 6-month window, you'll have the POAM window, get those knocked out, get your final assessment, good to go. Okay, when can we start? So I mentioned this a little bit briefly earlier about scheduling. We don't know the final 100% for sure, but I can't imagine it's going to be anything beyond the end of the year. They want us to get started. We want to get started. So I'm assuming the beginning of January. I think every C3PO is doing the same thing. Some are already booked for the entire year, like I mentioned. So when can you start? January. What does that mean, though? How long does an assessment take? Daniel mentioned this earlier. It's really a 6-week process. Outside of contract negotiations and price and all that fun stuff, the actual assessment is essentially 6 weeks long. It's a 6-week time frame, I should say, not 6 weeks long. 6 weeks out, we do what's called a readiness assessment, readiness review, if you will. This is not going and digging into your documents and everything. This is saying a no-go or go decision for us as a C3PO. Do you have your ducks in a row? Are you ready to be assessed? And there's a lot of different things we're looking at. I'm not going to mention them all here, but we're just trying to make sure that we believe you're ready to be assessed, not to pass assessment. We're not looking at adequacy and sufficiency of evidence at that point. Only, are you ready to start the assessment and going to be good to go? So, all right, what level do I need to be at? I'm only going to hit this briefly. We get this question a lot, but it's very simple. Level 1, FCI only. Covered in a slide earlier. If you only deal with FCI and you don't have a prime forcing you, then level 1, self-assessment, you're good to go. If you deal with CUI, if you will deal with CUI, or if you want to deal with CUI, in other words, if you're an aspiring defense contractor, which isn't counted in any of the numbers, all the companies that want to try to get into the market, then you've got to be at level 2. Level 3 is going to be for high risk contracts. There's probably only going to be about maybe 1,500 of them estimated. So expecting or thinking you might need to get level 3, very unlikely. And so that's the quick level advice. What if I don't pass the initial assessment? I just mentioned that 6-month POAM window. It's very, very important, and it's good that they added this. So you have time to pass and get your final assessment done. And here's a really key part that they added in the final rule. You can still win a contract award even if you're in your 6-month POAM window. You get a conditional certificate if you pass that 80% threshold. You can win an award. So that's very, very important, even though you still haven't finished that 6 week. Now, you have 6 months to get it fixed, and if you don't, trouble's going to happen. But you can do that, and I was surprised by that. So that was very good news. All right. I think I went fast.
Yeah. So related question is, if you get the poem to complete and you complete the poem, any DoD contractor has to be reassessed after 6 months, or just the poem completion will be sufficient?
Excellent. Okay, perfect. So let me explain what happens. You have the 6-month window. If you get your ducks in a row, you go back to your same C3PO or to another one, hypothetically, and you say, I'm ready. They reassess you. They're only looking at the things you failed on. It's not a reassessment. So if you pass everything that point, then you're good to go. You get your 110, you get your certificate, you're off and running. If the first time you get assessed, you don't hit that 80% threshold, you're starting over. If you get that 6-month window and you don't get that completed, then after that 6-month window, then you're going to be starting over. So it's pretty straightforward. Hope that helps.
Excellent. Thank you for explaining that, Kelly. I think what I also want to mention that it's just not like fun to just go and just do the assessment. I think there's a lot of preparation required before you are ready. You yourself feel that you are ready. You have all the documentation. You have all the compliance closures, gaps. Closures are done. You have closed all those gaps. And I think that's more time taking versus just running the assessment, right? So then only you go for the assessment. So when you are saying, when can I start? So when you are ready, that's the, I think, biggest point. That may take like maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, because based on the infrastructure you have. I think that's the key point. That's what any DoD contractor has to understand, that they might not be just ready on the flip of the coin. Right.
Can I add one thing in really quick?
Sure.
2 things that are really important. One is we are allowed to conduct mock assessments as C3POs and still be your assessor for your real assessment. we have a very, very firm brick wall between being consultants and being assessors. We are not allowed to cross a path if we're in the assessors, so we cannot give any kind of consulting advice. But you can have a mock assessment done, and you're going to come out of that knowing what didn't pass, so to speak. We just can't tell you how to fix it, but you will know. So that is an option. The second thing is, I want to give you guys kudos for something really important, because there's a lot of consulting firms that are out there. We're one. There's a lot of other ones that are out there. There's a lot that are in this RPO, RP community only. Having a consulting firm that has a CCP or even better, a CCA on staff, like Daniel and Prabhat have, I have to give you guys kudos, because we see that on the other side of companies that have gone through assessments with someone that's a consultant and they're not passing, and that consultant didn't lead them the right way. So having a consulting firm that has the CCP or CCA on staff, that is huge. That is a lot harder to get. It's an actual certification, high stakes exam, have to pass it, a lot more time put into it. So yeah, decided to share that tidbit. I want to give you guys kudos for that.
Thank you. Yeah, so remember I was asking, there's a presentation I did, and then now the question comes that, hey, we want to create the Azure, and that will live in the government space. Then we will later think about the M65, 365, where we have email and the data. So the question really lies that, can their Azure be CMMC certified without having their email and files? Maybe the files are staying in the file share in the Azure. So I don't want to say the files, but I want to say about emails, that without the emails, can they still be certified for CMMC, just the Azure portion of it or data center portion of it? Kelly?
I was going to see if Daniel wanted to take that. I'm happy to give my answer on it, which is no, strongly no. So here's the thing to think about too. An organization is not being assessed. We are assessing an information system. We are accrediting, or we are certifying an information system. You actually get an ID number for your information system once we have certified that you meet the requirements. So to do that, it would take, I'm trying to think of a way to do it. If you were using Azure Government and only using it for Azure Virtual Desktop, hypothetically maybe, but it would be really, really hard, because you still have your endpoints. You still have your users. You're not going to be able to. So no, I would say definitely no.
All right. All right. Thank you for addressing that question. Do we see any other question from the group who are joining? I'm looking at Q&A. We just hit the top of hour. I think there's a lot to talk about, this never-ending topic. So I wanted to thank you for our speakers, and wanted to flash the company overviews again. I don't think we're going to speak on that, but I think we have the company overviews. And if you need to contact us, this is our contact us slide. And thank you again for joining, and thank you, Kelly and Dan, for speaking today. Looking forward
Thank
to
you.
keep talking.
Thank you, Prabhat.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Kelly.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Thank you, guys. It's great.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Okay.